Yo Internet, Chris Bostock here at the Invest.Move personal training studio, and today we are going to be going over the 5 things you should be doing or need to do in your bench press to make sure that you are able to lift the most amount of weight possible with the best amount of technique possible. Now, this is not a tutorial on how to bench press. There are a lot of tutorials online in terms of how to do the specific technique of a bench press. Although a lot of the things we're going to cover will end up being technique related, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to do it. This is the kind of thing that potentially get missed out on those videos, and the key things that get our bench press from like a mediocre bench press into an extremely good, powerful and strong bench press. So if you're first trying to learn the bench press, please go and watch some tutorial videos and then come back here and have a look at these techniques or these kind of tips that we're going to go through, and these should help you to make your bench press explode and go really, really strong. The 5 things we're going to go over are grounding. We're then going to go over unrack position and wrist position. We're then going to go over reaching for the bar. We're then going to go over soft touches, and we're going to go over keeping locked in. First thing is to do with our grounding. So what do I mean by grounding for the first one? When we're doing like a squat or a deadlift, it's pretty obvious in terms of the grounding. We've got our feet in the ground, we're trying to be nice and stable. Now the same kind of thing applies with the bench press. There are 2 different ways we can have our feet in the bench press. One is with our feet completely flat, the other one is up on our toes. Depending on your kind of limb length and preferences, you could do either one of those. For certain federations, if you are going to compete in powerlifting, you need to have your feet flat. Others don't mind and you can have it on your toes. I personally like to have my feet flat because I can get the most amount of contact with the floor and get a good amount of foot pressure and leverage through the floor with my feet when I have them flat compared to on my toes. Again, it's not a tutorial. If you want to go on your toes, fine. If you want to go on flat feet, fine. You still need to apply this same thing. But our feet aren't the only thing that is keeping us grounded. We've also got our bum and our shoulder blades or our upper back, which is keeping us grounded on the bench because we're lying down on the bench. Now, the position we need to be in when we're in a bench press is having our shoulder blades and upper back retracted and depressed. So retraction is where our shoulder blades squeeze backwards. Depression is where we bring our shoulder blades down. So a good way of practicing this is by having our arms out in front of us, pushing our hands out forwards, which gets us to pronate, bringing our shoulder blades out. And then we're going to try, without bending our elbows, bring our shoulder blades backwards and squeeze our back. Imagine that you've got a credit card or something in the middle of your back and you're trying to squeeze them backwards. The next one is doing an anti-shrug. So we can do elevation of the shoulder blades where we shrug our shoulders up, and then we can do depression where we pull them down. You'll start to feel when you pull down a little bit of a stretch potentially across the pec, a little bit in towards the traps. Bringing your shoulder blades down is going to engage your lats. Bringing your shoulder blades backwards is also going to engage your lats, but a lot of kind of the upper back musculature from your rhomboids all the way through to your traps. If we can get our body into this position, what also happens is we arch our back. Now generally in lifts, like a deadlift or a squat, you would say don't arch your back. But we need to create a bridge to keep us stable on the bench press. So we're creating a bridge between our shoulder blades and our bum. If we bring the shoulder blades backwards and down, we end up with an arch in our back. It'll be easier to see if I do this. If my shoulder blades are in a neutral position, if I bring them backwards and then down, I end up with this arch in my lower back. Really need to get into that position to be able to be stable on the bench press. If we're not in that position, our shoulder blades can move around wherever they want. If we're locked in, they can't wiggle around. If our shoulder blades can move, we're going to move on the bench. Our bum's going to wiggle around and then our feet are going to wiggle around. Keep the shoulder blades back and locked in. keep the feet pressured into the floor, and have the bum as the stability bit between those two positions. How we get into that position is completely up to you. I'm going to show you 2 different ways of getting into that position, which most people do, but realistically, if you find a better way of doing it, do that. It's all good. The first way is the way that I personally do it. I've got quite short legs, so I need to get myself into a position and leverage the bench to get myself there, because I can't quite do it with my feet on the floor already. The second one will be with your feet already on the floor. Again, it doesn't matter which one you use, but I'll show you both different ways. We're going to place our hands on the bar to start off with. We're then going to have our feet up on the bench, lift ourselves into a bit of a bridge position, use the bar to pull our shoulder blades back and down, squeezing ourselves into that retracted and depressed position on the shoulders. We're then going to wedge the shoulder blades into the bench. From there, keeping that angle, we're going to lower the feet down onto the floor and get ourselves in a really stable, strong position on the floor, then lower the bum down. When I'm in that position, I'm able to start unracking the bar. So from here, get my hands set in position, I'm going to lift myself up, start to squeeze my shoulder blades back and down. From here, keep this tension as I lower my feet down to the floor and then push my bum down. From here now, I'm able to unrack the bar and be in this solid position where my shoulder blades are not going to wiggle around. I'm really stable on the bench and I've got a lot of tension coming through my whole body. The bench press is one of the more technical movements, and it's also weird where when you do a bench press with like good optimal technique, it doesn't feel like a pec exercise. It feels like an absolute torture device where you've got your body contorted. When we're bench pressing in the powerlifting sense, trying to get strong, we want to put ourselves in the most mechanically best position we can and the easiest position we can be to press the most weight, which is going to be in that locked in position. Second way of getting into it, really similar. We're just going to have our feet on the floor. So from here, using the floor to lift ourselves up, to squeeze our shoulder blades backwards. From there then, our feet are already on the floor, so we can just place our bum down, and then again we're in this position where we're nice and locked in with the shoulder blades. So as we go for this press then, everything can come up and down in a really nice, solid manner. As you can see on that one, I was probably not as arched, and like I said, my feet are just, I've got small legs, so I literally can't get enough wedge in the floor. If you're like me, try to use your feet on the bench. If you find that you can have your feet on the floor, no problem, then do that. There's no problem doing either.
Future Chris here. There's one thing I forgot to mention. Push your feet into the floor as hard as you can. You want to be transferring power from that stability and grounding in the floor up your body into your shoulder blades. Don't push the floor so much that you slide up the bench. Sometimes certain benches are a little bit more slippy than others, but you want enough pressure in the floor that when your shoulder blades are locked in, we're not wobbling around here. When the feet are pushed in, you're not moving your feet around at all. Put pressure down into the floor so you're stable both on the floor, on the bum, and on the shoulders. Back to the video.
Number 2 is wrist position and unrack. We want to try and get this wrist position nailed down as fast as possible, so we make sure that we're keeping away from any wrist injuries and also making sure that the bar is just settled in a really nice place around our hand. And then the unrack height, another one that we want to try and get nailed straight away. The unrack height will change. Because there are different types of bench press in terms of a close grip bench, a wide grip bench, depending on where your specific bench is in terms of how wide you are, will depend on where that right height is. And you may need to change it as you go through different exercises. If you're doing something where you've got some wider grip bench and then you're also doing some close grip bench, just change the rack height so we get this fundamental thing correct. First thing is the wrist position though. We want to try and get the wrist position so that the bar is stacked over the wrist joint and the elbow joint. If we have the bar over the edge, so it's coming on the outside, there's going to be a lot of pressure through the wrist. This is why a lot of people have wrist wraps to hold them in place, because as the weight gets heavier, it's going to want to wiggle and come out of position. If it comes out of position, it's going to be really hard to press and cause a lot of pain and injury. That doesn't mean we need wrist wraps, it's just why people have the wrist wraps, to lock the hand in kind of a casted position so they can hold it better. If we can just develop a good position in the first place, then we can use wraps down the line, the same as you would use a belt for squats or deadlift, but the underlying fundamental technique of having it in the right position shouldn't change. So, when we grip the bar, we want to make sure that the bar is resting between our thumb and going in a diagonal across the hand. We don't want to have it kind of twisted one way or the other so it ends up being up towards our fingers or coming across towards the little finger. If I was to have my hand in a position where the wrist is stacked over itself, when I apply pressure, I'm able to hold myself in a nice, good, strong position. So the easiest way to figure out where you want your wrist is actually to stand over the bar like I am now and apply pressure down into the bar. So if I was to do this and put my hands in this position, I'm like, right, I can already feel that feels bad. If I was to do this and come over there, I can feel like I'm going to roll. So if you were to just open your hands up, get that placement coming from the hand over towards this fat pad of the palm, and there then, we're like, cool, if I have this position here, all the weight is coming up through the wrist and going up in towards the elbow, or at least down in a straight line with gravity. Really important to get that figured out. As we go through reps, we might find that we start kind of cocking the wrist back towards the chest. Easiest way to fix that is literally just bring the wrist back into a neutral position. You might be unaware that you're doing it, so make sure you're filming your reps, or you can even sometimes look at the hands to see what's going on. Next one is to do with the unrack. Now, the first thing we went through was the body position and the grounding. When we get those shoulders locked in place, we don't want to move them. If the rack is too high, we end up in a position where, as you lift out, if the rack is too high, let's say the rack was over here, we end up lifting our shoulders out of position, and then we've got to get back into that position. Once we've wedged ourselves in, it's going to be really hard to get back there if we come out. Likewise, if we're in a position where this rack height is too low, and we're kind of down here, we've got to almost do a bench press to get it out. We want to try to be in a position where you're just using your triceps to get the bar out, which means we only need to lift the bar a little bit to get it out of height. Now, depending on the bench you're on, will depend on how big the J is. Some benches will only have a small metal notch, so you might only have to kind of unlock that much and you're out. Some of them will have a bit of a bigger lip like this one, so it might need to settle a little lower down, but that still means that when we're locked in this place, we just want to unrack with our triceps and then bring that into position, not with the shoulders. So from here, if I was to do both things, I get my wrist in position. Obviously, I'm going to do my setup again like I did at the start. I wedge myself in, wrists are in a good position, I'm locked in place, and then from there, I just tricep, and then I bring out. Now I'm in a good position where my wrists are stacked over each other, and I didn't move my shoulder blades out of position. That's number 2. Now, number 3, 4, and 5 happen one after another. So we're going to go through those at a similar time. The first one is reaching for the bar. The second one is a soft touch. And the third one is keeping locked. So obviously that's 1, 2, 3, but it is 3, 4, 5 in our order of doing stuff. Reaching for the bar. When we've got ourselves locked in position and we're starting to lower this bar down, we want to try to lower the bar at the same time as bringing the chest up towards the bar. We're getting tighter as we're going down into the movement. That doesn't mean that we lift ourselves physically up off the bench towards the bar. Bum needs to stay down on the bar. Feet need to be firm and shoulders need to be planted. But as we come down, we're stretching the chest up towards the bar. meeting the bar somewhere about kind of 1/4 away from the bench. This is going to get the range of motion shorter. It's also going to get us a lot tighter as we go for the press. And it's going to put us in a way better position to push from because we're even more locked in on the shoulders. The fourth thing, or that second one, is a soft touch. Don't bounce off the chest. When you go into a rep, even if we're doing touch and go, it's a soft touch. It's really similar to when I said about the deadlift, if you watch the deadlift video. It's a soft touch on the ground and then we go again. Reach for the bar, soft touch on the chest, and then push. If the bar bounces off the chest, it's very likely that we bounce out of position. Similar to when I said about the unrack, once we're out of position from the start, it's really hard to get back into that position. So if you're doing touch and go reps for kind of 8 reps and we start hitting the chest, after 3 or 4 reps, we're going to be nowhere near where we started in tightness. And then those consequent reps are going to be 1, harder to do, 2, put us in a worse position to move the weight, and 3, potentially a worse position in terms of injury risk as well. So a soft touch on the chest. The fifth one and the last one is keeping locked in. Now that we've got tight, when we press away, don't press the shoulder blades forwards. We straighten the arms out, but we keep the shoulders back. This is keeping us wedged into the bench, it's keeping us stable, and it's also making sure that every single rep will end up being the exact same. I've got my position off the chest, I've got my position at the end. So every rep comes from here, I come down, lift my chest, soft touch, keep tight, push away. Again, bring down, reach the chest, soft touch, push away. I'm going to do a few reps where I do all those 3 things. I'm then going to do a few reps where I don't do those things, and you can see the difference. So first up, good technique. This is what we want to be doing. Second one, this is what we don't want to be doing. Now hopefully you could see there's a big difference in those. One, I'm staying tight and touching with a nice bit of tension. Everything looks like it's moving the same. Second one, I'm all over the shop. This is the kind of thing which is going to send your bench press into oblivion in terms of the amount of weight you're able to lift. It will feel quite awkward to start off with, especially if we're not used to applying these certain pressures and techniques. But once it gets settled in, and once we get locked in, you will hit some reps where it will feel weightless. Weight that you used to feel or used to think that was heavy will start to move incredibly easy. The great thing about this as well is that then when the weight gets too heavy, the thing that stops working is purely strength. It's nothing to do with our technique. If we keep locked in and we eliminate all of the variables except can I push the thing properly, if it doesn't move, you know it's just too heavy, or that's where your maximum is. If every rep is a little bit different, how are you supposed to know what you can do? One week you could come in and lift 150 kilos, the next week you come in you can lift 100. One week you come in you lift 90, the next week it feels really heavy. Whereas every single time if we come in and we just press with the same technique every single time, there's going to be no change. This is going to make your bench press explode. You're going to be able to lift a lot more weight, a lot safer, a lot better in position wise, and also just get an absolute monster of a press as we go through. Cool. 5 things to make your bench press explode. Things that we need to be focusing on. I've made videos for the squat and deadlift as well, so if you haven't seen those, please check those out. And thanks very much for watching.